Thank you very much. Honorable Mr. Mayor, the First Lady, and all the dignitaries who have assembled here today. I don't have words to express my gratitude for the love and for the warm welcome that I have received in Campinas. It's an amazing city, amazing people, and I'm glad to be a part of this event. I've been asked to speak to you about the legacy of love, a legacy that I inherited from my grandparents and from my parents, and I am very proud of that legacy. But before I tell you about my legacy, I want to share with you a story that comes from ancient India. The story is of an ancient Indian king who had two sons, and he was growing old and he wanted to retire from his work as the king, and he didn't know which son should inherit his title. And so one day he decided, and he told both his sons, that you have to go around the world, and the one that comes back here first will inherit this kingdom. So one of the boys went off in a hurry. He went right around the world, and the other boy just remained at home, and he circled his parents, went around his parents, and just stood there. So when the other boy came back home, the king asked, said, "You went around the world, and what did you see?" And he said, "Oh, I've seen wonderful things, and I've learned wonderful things, and I'm going to try to use all that knowledge that I acquired to make this kingdom great." And then he asked the younger boy, "What did you learn?" And he said, "My world is around you, my parents. What you have taught me and what you have given me as inheritance is all that I need to make this kingdom as great as you have made it." So he received the kingdom, and he received the legacy of love, the same way I have received the legacy of love from my grandparents. I want to share with you two spatially important stories, two important lessons that I learned from my grandfather. When I was living in South Africa as a young boy, I was born there, I was subject to a lot of prejudices. I was beaten up by whites because they thought I was too black, and then beaten up by blacks because they thought I was too white. And it filled me with a lot of anger and rage. I wanted to fight back again. I wanted to be strong and fight with anybody who abused me. And that is when my parents decided it's time to go to India and give me the opportunity to live with grandfather and hopefully learn something from him. And the first lesson that grandfather taught me was about understanding anger and being able to use that energy constructively. He said anger is like electricity. It's just as powerful and just as useful, but only if we use it intelligently. But it can be just as deadly and destructive if we abuse it. So just as we channel electrical energy and bring it into our lives and use it for the good of humanity, we must learn to channel anger in the same way so that we can use that energy for the good of humanity rather than abuse it and cause violence and death. He suggested that I should write an anger journal. He said every time you get angry about something, don't act on it, don't say anything or do anything that is going to change the course of your life. But write a journal with the intention of finding a solution to the problem, and then commit yourself to finding a solution. Now this is very important because a lot of people today do write an anger journal, but they simply pour their anger out into the journal, so every time they go back and read the journal, they are just reminded of the incident and they get angry all over again. So we don't, and they came to the conclusion that more than 85% of the violence that we experience in our lives, personal lives as well as the lives of nations, is generated by anger. We get angry and we do things and say things that we regret for the rest of our lives. So it's very important for us to understand anger and be able to control it so that we don't commit violence and create chaos in our society. The other lesson that I learned from him gave me an insight into his philosophy. It was through a little 3-inch pencil. I was coming back from my tuitions one day, and I had this little 3-inch pencil in my hand, and I decided, like a 12-year-old, I said, I need a better pencil, this is too small for me to use. And without a second thought, I just threw the pencil away because I was so sure that grandfather would give me a new pencil when I asked him for one. But that evening when I met grandfather and asked him for a new pencil, instead of giving me one, he subjected me to a lot of questions. He wanted to know how the pencil became small and where did I throw it away and why did I throw it away and on, and I couldn't understand why he was making such a fuss over a little pencil until he told me to go out and look for it. And I said, you must be joking. He said, you don't expect me to look for a little pencil in the dark? He said, oh yes, I do. Here's a flashlight. And he sent me out with a flashlight to look for this pencil, and I think I must have spent about 2 hours searching for it. And when I finally found it and brought it to him, he said, now I want you to sit here and learn 2 very important lessons. The first lesson is that even in the making of a simple thing like a pencil, we use a lot of the world's natural resources. And when we throw them away, we are throwing away the world's natural resources, and that is violence against nature. And the second lesson is that because in an affluent society we can afford to buy all these things in bulk, we overconsume the resources of the world. And because we overconsume them, we are depriving people elsewhere of these resources, and they have to live in poverty, and that is violence against humanity. And that was the first time I realized that all of these things that we do every day, consciously and unconsciously, things that we overconsume or throw away or waste, that all of these constitute violence of some sort, either against nature or against other human beings. It has become so much a part of our lives because we have created a whole culture of violence around us. A culture of violence that has seeped so deeply in every aspect of our lives that our sports has become violent, our entertainment is violent, our relationships are violent, our religion is violent, our economy is violent, everything about us is violent. Now, if we have that kind of a violent atmosphere all around us, how can we create peace? Peace is not the absence of war. Peace is where the whole population can live in harmony and love and respect for each other. His whole philosophy is based on love and respect. That is why I call the legacy of love. Because without love and respect, understanding and acceptance and compassion, we cannot practice nonviolence. Nonviolence is not about fighting an enemy. It is about transforming a friend. He never believed that he had enemies in the world. Even when he was fighting for India's independence, he said the British are not our enemies. They are our friends, and we want to transform them. Between the rich and the poor, and within the world, between the rich nations and the poor nations, we cannot expect to have security. We have the wrong notion that security and stability of any country depends on how strong we are. So we build a big army, we spend a lot of money in acquiring all kinds of weapons so that we can destroy our so-called enemies. And we think that we can safeguard our corner of the world and not be concerned about the rest of the world. But we are all so interlinked and interrelated and interconnected that what happens to one person is eventually going to happen to us. What happens to one country is eventually going to affect the rest of the world. So no country, however powerful, is going to be able to ensure its stability and security if the rest of the world is allowed to go down the drain. The security and stability of any nation in the world depends on the security and stability of the whole world. And unless we create that kind of a relationship in the world where we are concerned about those who are poor and marginalized and do something to help them grow, we are not going to have peace in this world. We also have to remember that when we talk about violence in human society, violence is not just the physical violence. Grandfather made me draw a genealogical tree of violence, just as we do a family tree with grandfather and the children and so on. He made me draw a tree of violence, with violence as the grandparent, and physical violence and passive violence as the two branches. And every day before I went to bed, I had to analyze and examine everything that I had experienced during the day. Things that I may have done to other people or people may have done to me. Anything, I had to analyze all of that and put it in their appropriate places on that tree. If it was physical violence, where we use physical force against people, that would go under physical violence. But if it's the kind of violence where we don't use any physical force, and yet we hurt people, directly or indirectly, consciously or unconsciously, because of the way of life that we practice, a selfish, greedy way of life. All the discrimination and oppression and all of these things that go on in our societies is a form of passive violence. When he made me do this introspection, I was amazed that within a few months, I was able to fill up a whole wall in my room with acts of passive violence. The physical violence didn't grow very much because there is a limit to how much physical violence one can use. But the passive violence grew endlessly. And that is when grandfather explained to me the connection between the two. He said, we commit passive violence all the time, every day, consciously and unconsciously. That generates anger in the victim, and the victim then resorts to physical violence to get justice. So it is passive violence that fuels the fire of physical violence. So logically, if we want to put out that fire of physical violence, we have to cut off the fuel supply. And since the fuel supply comes from each one of us, we have to become the change that we wish to see in the world. If we don't change ourselves, don't change our weaknesses to strengths, don't change our attitudes, we will never be able to create peace. So the way we can create peace is by educating the children in the right way. Today, schools and colleges, unfortunately, so I have come here today as a peace farmer to plant the seed in your minds, and I hope that you won't let it rot and perish, but let it interact so that all of us together can change this world and make it a better place for future generations. Thank you very much.